All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I can ask for your attention again, we'll continue with our program. Our moderator, our chair for this panel is Marco Respenti. He is the director in charge at Bitter Winter, which is a news source that writes on human rights and religious freedom cases. So please welcome Marco and the panel.
Good morning. Thank you all for being with us today, and thank you to the organizer, Ms. Katrina Lanzo-Strat, and Ambassador Sam Brownback for having me here. I'm not a native speaker of English, so forgive me for all my mistakes and slowness in speaking. We are today dealing with a very important topic, and we have a wonderful panel of experts on the subject, and the topic is genocide and how this terrible reality impact the area. We all know that genocide is a word created by Polish lawyer Raphael Lemkin in 1944 book, Axis Rule in Occupied Europe, from which I come, Europe, Italy. That word genocide was invented by him to specifically target an unprecedented crime against humanity of a specific kind. When you want to wipe entirely out a portion of humanity, canceling it, it's awful. I have no other word for that. Unfortunately, it was World War II, and the actors of World War II were many, among which there was Soviet Union, and Polish Raphael Lemkin was not able to develop fully his understanding of the word genocide. So he devised international condition upon which later in 1948, the International Convention for the Prevention of Genocide was crafted to specifically understand what genocide is. But unfortunately, as I said, he was not able to mention Holodomor, the genocide in Ukraine because of the Soviet Russia, and culture as a marker for identifying a human group targeted for a genocide. This is why we lack the concept of cultural genocide within international law today. And cultural genocide is what happens this side of the world many, many times. And I spoke too much already, but I want to throw on the table these general remarks to introduce the topic of today. And I just immediately let the microphone to our panelists. First of all, I will introduce them and then give them the mic. At my left, Mr. Omer Kanat, President of the Uyghur Human Rights Project. We have then Mr. Zhou Min Hut of the Rohingya community in Japan. Mr. Ilham Mahmoud, President of the Japan Uyghur Association, and last but not the least, of course, this is a common saying, but it's true, Mr. Arya Tsewang Gyalpo, representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which I had the honor to meet and interview, the Dalai Lama, and for Japan and for the East. So I'm beginning with Mr. Kanat, the President of the Uyghur Human Rights Project. Can you can say, of course, freely whatever you wish today, but of course, your people, Uyghur, are target in the People's Republic of China of a specific kind of cultural genocide. Your comment.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very excited to be here in Japan and Tokyo. It is not the first time that I'm in Tokyo. This is last October I was in Tokyo attending International Uyghur Forum. And I also want to extend my gratitude to IRF Summit and Mr. Ambassador Sam Brownback, Ms. Katrina Lantos, and Japanese host who organized this important and timely gathering. So you talked about cultural genocide, but Uyghurs today face a full-fledged genocide. Because what's going on against in our homeland, East Turkestan, fit perfectly to the provisions that of the provisions of the Genocide Convention, which say it constitutes a genocide. First of all, maybe people don't know who the Uyghurs are. Just a few sentences about the Uyghurs. Uyghurs is a Turkic Muslim people. They have a long history and rich culture. They live in East Turkestan. We call the region East Turkestan, but the Chinese government called it Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Chinese communists took over the control of East Turkestan in 1949. Since then, Chinese government has been pursuing a policy of systematic assimilation, but this systematic assimilation policy turned into a genocidal policy in 2017. Since then, Uyghurs are suffering under this policy, and Chinese government has been committing a genocide against the Uyghurs. So in 2017, Chinese government started to round up tens of thousands of people from all walks of life, students, teachers, professions, farmers, businessmen, scholars, and put them into concentration camps. What's going on in concentration camps is, there is torture, systematic rape, deprivation from sleep, deprivation from sleep, and then also death in custody. So because of China wanted to hide what's going on, but the scale and scope of this, repression and this atrocities was so big that even China couldn't hide it and expose, and therefore now in the world, 11 parliaments condemn the atrocities, passed the resolutions to condemn the atrocities, and 2 independent Uyghur tribunals, one in London in 2021, after reviewing 10,000 of pages of documents, after hearing witnesses, victims, and experts, determined what the Chinese government is doing to Uyghurs, the treatment of Uyghurs by the Chinese government as genocide and crimes against humanity. Recently, even last Friday, an independent court in Hague, in Netherlands, also made the determination after hearing many witnesses, victims, and reviewing documents. This made the determination that what the Chinese government is doing to Uyghurs is genocide. And it is very clear with the Chinese officials' statements also. One Chinese official explained the purpose of these camps, why they created these camps, why the Uyghurs have been put in these camps. He said in Kashgar, a high-level Chinese official, the purpose of the camps is to break their lineage, break their roots, break their connections, break their origins. It's very clear that the Chinese government's purpose is to eliminate the Uyghurs as an ethnic identity, as an ethnic group in China. So therefore, because of this, we call these camps as concentration camps, and what the Chinese government is doing to Uyghur is a genocide.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanat. We remain on the Uyghur question because it's well known what is happening to the Uyghurs, yet it's kind of unknown. Many people still don't know how to pronounce even that name. So I want to call Mr. Ilham Mahmoud, president of the Japan Uyghur Association, for his comments. He lives in Asia, not in China, but in Japan, and will be very much interesting to take his side on the problem. Mr. Mahmoud.
Thank you. すみません、私、英語が不自由なもんなので、日本語で喋りたいと思います。書いた。先、私の先輩であるウメル・カナさんからウイグルのジェノサイドに対して、お話あったと皆さんそれを聞きました。
Everyone heard from Mr. Umal, my senior, about the genocide taking place in Uyghur.
では具体的な話するともう長くなっちゃうんで、まずはジェノサイドっていう受けてる民族っていうのは、完全に人間っていう、ところから下されて動物以下になって全ての権利を失っているっていうと同じものだと考えています。
To be specific, it's going to be too long. But when we talk about the culture of genocide, it pretty much refers to an activity where human beings are treated below the animals.
ですからウイグル地域で、ウイグル人そのものが今いわゆる面での権利、考え方そういうものは持つこと自体が、中国にとっては脅威を視されているんです。
So to the government of China, all the thoughts and all the beliefs from people Uyghur are threatening to them. So they're trying to oppress the culture.
だからジェノサイドそのものがウイグル人にどういうウイグル社会どういう影響を与えているのかというと、まずは社会的な影響にすると人口動態の変化、人口が減らしている、それと同時に人口はどこに行ってどこで減っているのか、これに対して具体的なデータがつかんでいません。つかんでデータ、そういう人々がどういうふうに消えているのか分からないです。
So from social aspects, the one thing we can observe is the decrease in the population, but we have no ideas where that is taking place.
それでも文化の消滅ですね。ジェノサイドの一番最初は文化から始まるものであって、ウイグルの文化そのものを完全に否定し、それはウイグルの文化をいろんな方法で中華文化の一部分として混ぜてウイグル文化、ウイグルの歴史を完全に否定するという状況。
They are negating the entire culture of Uyghur and doing a cultural cleansing, mixing up with Chinese culture to eradicate the whole Uyghur culture.
それからその家庭を完全に破壊する。で家族間お互いに連絡取れない、取ること自体が相手に危ない状況に落としてしまうっていう状況。
And they are destroying a family to be specific, so they make a situation where they make a situation where family cannot even communicate with each other because of the risk, the safety risk.
例えば私自身の話すると、2017年の4月、これが母親に、電話した最後だったんですけども、その時母親から電話しないでと。何があったらこちらから母親から私に連絡するということが最後になって、この7年間悪い情報はないですから母親は生きてるじゃないかなと私は思います。
Talking about my own experience, the last time I communicated with my own mother was April 2017, and the thing she told me was, please do not call me. I will call you when something happens. And I haven't heard from her since. So I'm hoping no bad news has been taken place, but situations like that.
それからジェノサイドそのものが地域的な経済に影響ですね。これはもちろん中国政府の企業に対する影響ではなく、ウイグル人そのものに対する影響が強くなっている。っていうのは、たくさんの力がある人間は強制収容所か刑務所かということで、家庭の中に残って、ウイグル人の8割は農民ですから。でこの男性がいなくなると女性たちがその家庭子供それから畑仕事それは完全にもうできなくなってウイグル人は経済的に完全に落ちて貧乏そのものになって共産党の言う通りにしなきゃいけない状況に落ちているんです。
So speaking of economical impact, since they are saying most of us are farmers, 80% of us are farmers. So if they send all the manpower, a male person, into the camp or jail, our economy will collapse automatically because only female and children left that they can't take over all the farmland works. So that leads to the poverty of the country. And eventually force us to abide by a China policy or China.
それとウイグル人ウイグル社会そのものが、中国のそういう勝手な破壊を受けてるんですから心理的にもまずは社会っていうよりもお互いの家庭の中でもお互いに信用しなくなって社会がだんだんウイグル人コミュニティそのものがだんだん崩壊されているんです。
So another thing is about the psychological aspect, and because of this oppression, people's mind got pretty much influenced. So people start becoming skeptical with each other, even among the family, and that's a psychological impact.
あとまたお話の中でまた述べたいことは次になってお話ししたいと思います。
I'll speak more a little later.
One of the worst part of the moderator is to call to people to not to conclude but to come an end because other people need to talk, and I would be delighted to hear about this tragic. Not delighted, but interested in about this tragic situation. But we, of course, have a program to respect, and so far we have been so good. So we will have time for some questions, and I want to give the mic now to Mr. Arya Tsvevang Gyalpo, representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for Japan and the East, to remain on that side of the world and comment on another genocide, the Tibetan people. Mr. Gyalpo.
Tashitalik, and good morning and konnichiwa. First of all, I would like to, I'm very humbled and grateful that I have been invited to speak on this international religious forums. And given the religious atrocities that is Tibetan and China-occupied regions are facing, I think this is a very important forum. So as you know, like my Uyghur brothers, they have also described the genocides. Tibet has also been a country which has suffered the great genocide, cultural genocide, and destructions of the temples, monasteries, religious repressions for these last more than 70 years. Even these kind of repressions is also continuing. Now, like this is happening even in Uyghur at the same time in the southern Mongolia also. Now, what is the impact of these cultural genocides? If you say now, we have news from the foreign journalists saying they're describing the Tibet. What is Tibet now? Tibet has become a military state. Tibet has become a police state, meaning that there are more police in Tibetan cities than Tibetan people. Why these police are there? Police booths are there, not to protect the Tibetans, but to observe and keep a strict surveillance on the Tibetan movements. So that's why it's become a police state. Now another thing is that they say that Tibet, there's an information blackout. What is information blackout? There is no movement of people and information in and outside Tibet. We don't have a news from Tibet. Why? Many people feel that Tibet is okay, there is no news on Tibet, but the fact is otherwise. And then the Tibetan plateau, which once His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said that it should be a zone of peace. What has it become now? It has become a highly militarized place. So that is a great threat to the South Asian countries, India, Nepal, and Bhutan. So this is not a Tibetan issue. We all need to be very careful about what China is doing at these borders. Now, with the silence of the international community on what is happening in Tibet and other occupied regions, China is now committing a daylight destructions of the Tibetan monasteries, Buddhist statues, like Larungar and Yachingar. Many of you may be knowing. Larungar is a place in the eastern Kham region where thousands of Tibetans, Chinese, South Koreans, and Mongolians and other nationals, they study together and study Buddhism under the Tibetan masters. Now, China, instead of praising these cultural communications, they saw this cordial relation between the China and Tibetan and other nationals as a threat to the communist regime. So what did they do? Since the beginning of 2001 and 2016, 2019, they destroyed most part of these monasteries and forced the Tibetans and Chinese and other nationals to go back to their places. So this is their divide and rule policy, which is not going to help China. And then, like in 2001, you know, there is a Trago regions in which they have, in a broad daylight, destroyed 99 foot Buddha statues and 33 foot Maitreya Buddha statues and 45 giant prayer wheels and monastic school. And then they destroyed 45 foot Guru Padmasambhava statues. Who's Guru Padmasambhava? He is an Indian saint who introduced Buddhism in Tibet in 7th century. Now this kind of blasphemy and religious sacrileges is going on, and international community to some extent is a silence on these things. Now this silence has encouraged China to commit these kind of religious violence in a daylight. Now what is happening in China? Last year China, they have made a law. Now what they are doing is that they are trying to legitimize their religious interference and violation by enacting a law. Last year, in 2023, they promulgated this Religious Order number 19, in which they said that all religious venues where the teachings are happening, they should have a permission from the government. And all the religious teachers should have a certificate to teach. And then they said that if the religions, including Buddhism, Christian, Islam, and Taoism, if they want to stay as a religion and teach the people, these religions should have Xi Jinping's ideology of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Now you see, where is the religion then? So this is how China is trying to change the color of the very essence of the religion, integrity of the religion itself. So international community should not keep quiet. Now, China, they have in 2005, 2007, they have promulgated this religious law of Order number 5, in which they said that because they know that religion has a great power in the society, and religious teachers are very much revered. In Tibetan Buddhism, the reincarnated lamas are highly revered. The topmost is the His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama. Now China is claiming that they have the right to appoint the religious leader. And this is not only in the Tibet, even the bishops and imam of Islam, they are also being selected by the Chinese Communist regime. Now with His Holiness, now they say that right now His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the 14th Dalai Lama. The first Dalai Lama was born in 1391. Since then, now 14th Dalai Lama, next Dalai Lama is going to be 15th Dalai Lama. Now, what is this reincarnation? Reincarnation is a process in which the highly realized Lama, they decide to get reborn, to help the sentient being, to help continue their work, to propagate peace. But China says that they have the power and to select the religion. Chinese Communist Party, they don't believe in religion. Mao Zedong once said that the religion is a poison. So they don't know anything about the life after death, concept of the life after death, anything about Buddhism, interdependence. Then how can they select the religious leader? So this is something happening in Tibet as well as in Uyghur and in China also. So we have to be very careful about these things. Now, like we also need to be careful that China has become a threat to the democracy and international peace. What is happening at the Indian border, Nepal, and then Pacific Islands, Southeast China Sea. Taiwan is regularly under the threat. Japanese Senkaku Islands. Situation has become very volatile. Who is responsible for this? It is not China or the Chinese, but the Chinese communist leadership who needs to continue there to remain in the power. So, now what we need to do is that the international community, we all need to work together to free China and the Chinese occupied territory like Tibet, Uyghur, and Southern Mongolia, so that world become a peaceful place, and then China become a democracy, and there is people can speak freely. Another thing is that the US legislation that recently passed, which is Tibet Resolve Act, in which it has clearly said that China's claim that Tibet is a part of China since ancient time is inaccurate and wrong. And China's continued interference in the Tibetan selection of religious leader is not good. So this kind of legislation should come from many of our other democratic countries also. And then, like, I would like to conclude my remarks with Dr. Martin Luther King's quote that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So whenever there is a repression, religious repression, human rights violations, and destructions of the religious artifacts, we should all come together and unanimously condemn the perpetrator and their co-host. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gyalpo. Thank you to our panelists for awakening our conscience today. And you see how much this panel intertwines with the previous one on the power of religious people of faith, posing a threat, a real threat, for people ruling in darkness. And we will hear now to another testimony, important testimony, Mr. Zhou Min Tut of the Rohingya community in Japan. You know about the Rohingya tragedy, and it was front news for many days, for many weeks and months, a few years ago, and then kind of disappeared. And this reminds us how much media people can be your friends or your foes when they get into forgetfulness. So we want to lit a light again on this tragedy, and we want to give some at least 5 to 7 minutes to the audience for some questions. So, Mr.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Mintut. I am from a Rohingya community in Japan. I've been living in Japan for 26 years, and I've been telling Japanese government and the world and crying on the Rohingya crisis. The Rohingyas are a predominantly Muslim community living in Rakhine state of Myanmar. They are not tolerated in Myanmar for being Muslims and are oppressed and persecuted beyond one's comprehension for their culture, ethnicity, and religion. Rohingya crisis is purely on ethnic, cultural, religious, and political persecution to rid Arakan of the Muslim population, particularly from 1962 military coup in Myanmar. The Rohingya Muslims have faced continuous and systematic process of delegitimization, institutionalized persecution, and discriminatory abuses, culminating one of the greatest genocide in the 21st century. For more than 6 decades, they have been systematically deprived of their fundamental rights and freedoms, even the ability to survive. Although the United Nations has described them as the world's most persecuted minority decades ago, not today. The international community has failed categorically to protect them. I'm really sorry to say that. Genocide is not something that happens overnight or without warning. The destructions of Rohingya began decades ago, particularly from 1962, military rule. In 1978, 77-78, Myanmar's military violently attacks on the Rohingya people, and Rohingyas have fled to Bangladesh. About 300,000 Rohingyas have fled to Bangladesh as refugees. In 1982, the Myanmar military rebuked Rohingya citizenship rights even with the 1982 citizenship law. Today, we Rohingya peoples are stateless in our own country. It becomes a basics the points to commit the genocide on the Rohingya people. Yeah, and again in 1991, violence attacks and fled more than 250,000 Rohingyas as the refugees to Bangladesh, because the area is close to Bangladesh. Where I was born in Myanmar, it is maybe 3 or 4 kilometers far from Bangladesh border, I mean Naf River, which is demarcated Bangladesh and Myanmar. And I'm briefing the remarks. In June 2012, the military and Buddhist Rakhine extremists has killed many hundreds of innocent Rohingyas, confining back of Rohingya villages, ghettos, and apartheid-like concentration camps in Myanmar till today. In the worst case, in 2017, the world has appalled by the images of hundreds and thousands of Rohingya men, women, and children fleeing mass atrocities in Rakhine State. Families were massacred, mass graves uncovered, hundreds of villages scorched, thousands of houses burned to the ground, women gang raped, babies thrown into flames, forcing nearly 1 million survivors, including my immediate family members, I mean my siblings, are still in Bangladesh refugee camps for more than 7 years, almost 7 years, I think, to take refuge in neighboring Bangladesh, creating an unprecedented humanitarian disaster and posing threats to the international peace and security. In 2019, on behalf of the Rohingya people, Gambia, an African country, filed genocide case at International Court of Justice, and the court issued some provisional measures to stop genocide. But this is still going on. In 2022, the United States, a State Department determined the Myanmar military has committed genocide and crimes against humanity on Rohingya. We Rohingya people are very pleased and grateful to the people of United States, Biden administration, especially Secretary Antony Blinken, for his wise and courageous determination. I need to say thanks to Ambassador Sams as well, because he was one of the core parts of that process. I still remember I talked to you with this thing. But, Ambassador, the genocides are still going on for their religious belief. Is still ongoing, and Rohingyas are on the brink of extinction. I need to remind it to the world today. I appeal through this summit to the international community to stand firm and strong on the face of religious discrimination and persecution. I believe there should be freedom of religious and belief for everyone. No one is entitled to restrict it in this 21st century. It is time for the international community to come forward to stop ongoing genocide on Rohingya people, especially. And I want to remind you all, this summit is this year holding in Japan is very positive and very good opportunity, especially for the Japanese government. If you want to stop the genocide, or if you want to stop in occurring the genocide, you must need the political will. It is very, very important. I am living in Japan. I don't see any kind of the religious persecution in Japan. But Japan is a leading democratic country in Asia, and they need very strong political will to stop the genocide in Uyghur and Tibet and Rohingyas, standing firmly together with the international community. Japan should play a leading role to protect the human rights. The religious right is also a human right. If someone cannot believe or perform their religious freely, there is no human rights. So we all are talking about the human rights. And we have to stand very firmly to protect those human rights for everyone, not only someone else. So we are facing, especially in Asia, the military junta in Myanmar. You know, in Myanmar, when I'm talking about the Myanmar, not only Rohingyas are facing the operation. Now, after 2021 military coup, all Myanmar peoples are suffering under the military junta. We need to get rid of this military junta with the help of international community. So I am appealing to all of you to help Rohingya people as well as Myanmar Christian people, Hindu people. You know, the Myanmar is a majority Buddhist country. More than 80% are Buddhist people. And the minority people are suffering under the military rule because there are a lot of discrimination on the basis of religion. So we need to stand up against this military junta. All problems are rooted from the military rule. So we need to be united and stand up to stop the genocide all over the world. Thank you very much.
Let's underline with your applause, with a bigger round of applause to our panelists today, their appeal for their people, Uyghur, Tibetans, and Rohingya. Again, please applaud to them. And they are just the tip of the iceberg in the People's Republic of China and Myanmar. And I do thank you all for your attention. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes? 5 minutes, okay. For some question from the audience, please be short, right to the point, and also the replies, please, very short, so we give space to others. Please. Yes, Holly.
Well, I have a question about China and China's change in policy. Thank you. I have a question about China and China's change in policy, and it seems to me that people who would have been watching could see that there were signals dating back to 1998 when the policies changed officially regarding Falun Gong. But what happened in 2017? Because people I know who've worked on religious freedom were very, very optimistic until the summer of that year, and then all of a sudden things seemed to fall apart.
Thank you. So what happened in 2017 that changed the landscape?
Yeah, the change was actually in 2009. 2009, there was a protest against Chinese government's repression and killing some of the Uyghurs in Guangdong province by the Chinese mob. So this demonstration was a peaceful demonstration, but the Chinese police used brute force to suppress, and hundreds of people have been killed. And at that point, I think that it became obvious the Chinese government's policies. Everybody, to the world, it became known that the Chinese government's policy in our region and Xinjiang failed. They have been telling that there is harmony between ethnic groups that has changed. And Chinese government at that point decided to solve the Uyghur issue. They use, final solution, for example. This term is very, everybody knows what the final solution is. They ended some Chinese politicians, academics even, suggested China to how they can solve the Uyghur problem. So the Uyghurs, they tried to assimilate the Uyghur by systematic assimilation policy, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, but they failed because the Uyghurs stick to their religion and their culture. And some people say that also the visit of Xi Jinping to Kashgar played also a very important role in changing the policy, because when Xi Jinping visited Kashgar, I think he thought that the Uyghurs have been, the assimilation policy, because the people in the region reported to the central government that Chinese policy was, successful in the region. But when he visited Kashgar in 2014, he saw that nothing has changed in Kashgar. Even there are some unconfirmed reports that he asked the Chinese officials why Uyghurs are still Uyghurs, because they were, living with their own tradition, with their own culture. He saw a very different China. He thought that it is part of China, but when he visited, Kashgar, so he saw a different city with the Uyghur culture, Uyghur tradition. So he criticized the local officials, what you have done in 70 years. The Chinese government's policy to assimilate the Uyghur people was failed. So therefore they decided to forcefully, assimilate the Uyghur people. And also Xi Jinping's this signature project, One Belt, One Road project, also played very important role, because they started to see the Uyghurs as a obstacle to the realization of that one belt, one road policy, because this one road starts from East Turkestan, one from Kashgar to Pakistan, all the way to the Europe, and the other through Ili, Korgas, from Kazakhstan all the way to the Europe. So this was, I think, and Chinese leaders also paranoid that maybe the Uyghurs will be used by Western powers to prevent the realization of one belt, one road policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahmoud. Any additional comments on this? Very brief, please. Any additional comments on these questions from your point of view as a Uyghur leader? What happened in 2017 that changed the landscape?
まあ、国際的には私たちその2017年という話から発するんですけど、実は2017年は最後に中国がこれは最後だ、ここでウイグルを完全に消滅しなきゃいけないっていう最後にやったことであって、これは単なるその時から共産党が一気にやったことではないですね。この長い間共産党は一歩一歩一歩やってきて、90年代実は上海協力機構彼らを設置するのは、それももともとその中央アジアの5カ国と一緒にロシア、中央アジアの3カ国一緒に5カ国で上海協力機構を作ったのも、このウイグルをターゲットして、このウイグルを破壊するための準備段階であった。ですからまあそれは2000年911以降、突然ウイグルは過激思想のものから一気にテロリスト民族に変わってしまったんです。
So this didn't happen all at once in 2017, but China has been planning deliberately since 19th, and especially after 9/11 in 2001, together with 5 Central Asian countries to destroy Uyghur. And then since 2011, they labeled us as a radical groups, radical ethnic groups, so that they even depress us harder.
I'm sorry, we ran out of time. We have other panels, and I thank you for your patience and for your understanding. And I want to thank, lastly, Mr. Omer Kanat, Mr. Ilham Mahmoud, Mr. Arya Svengan Gyalpo, and Mr. Zo Min Tut. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the program.
Yep.